Welcome to Last Call with Jamion Christian. Our guest today, Helen Williams. Helen is the CEO of HMW Consulting, where she works directly with coaches and administrators on navigating today's challenges. A former basketball coach who has experiences at such places as Merrimack, Wake Forest, South Florida, MIT, and the Naval Academy, and experiences at Princeton and Harvard. She also works as a color analyst for ESPN College Basketball, hosts a weekly show, a coach for coaches, Connecting the Dots. We are welcoming Helen Williams to Last Call. Helen, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
I am fired up to have this conversation. We had a chance to start working together through the BCU, and I've just always been impressed with your hustle, how you work, how you attack it. I'm not always the best board member, but you do an unbelievable job. I have so much respect for you. How are things going for you, and how has the year been?
Things are going good. Busy with March Madness right now with television, so that's always exciting. My favorite time of the year, and just really happy to just be surrounded by basketball all day, every day here for the next few weeks.
Yeah, what's it like? You're diving more and more into the color analyst position, which is amazing. What's that like for you, and what are some of the things you've had to learn along the way as you continue to improve upon it?
Well, first of all, it allows me to stay around the game. When I retired from coaching, I just, I had to find a way to be around the game, and it allows me to do that. I get to go to practice. I watch film. I get to prepare for games as if I'm going to coach them. And I really get a chance to, get to know all of these coaches. And I think that that's really one of the best parts is I find myself asking coaches, are you taking time for yourself? Are you resting? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? And just picking their brains about how they're running their program. So that's really fun meeting them, meeting the kids and seeing, hearing some of their great stories is also a lot of fun. But then again, just getting a courtside seat to basketball. And every once in a while I get a free t-shirt, which is cool. It has taught me just, you have to be prepared. It's not something, it's one of those things where your mistakes, everybody sees or hears. So it's not like you have to be perfect, but you really have to dive into honing your craft and spending time making sure that you're prepared. Because one of the things that I think is really important is that the coaches work really hard at what they do. The athletes work really hard at what they do, and they deserve a broadcaster, an analyst who does the same, who puts, the same amount of time in to make sure that they get the broadcast that they deserve. I don't take any game that I do lightly, no matter what game it is.
Yeah, I love the level of respect. Like when you're saying that, I saw what respect you have for the competition of it all. And we've both been on it when we've had analysts come up, and you can tell they've done no research on our team.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And how infuriating that is to try to give them 5 points right before the tip. So they can go on and try to give a depiction of it. Women's basketball is growing at an unbelievable level. It's really excellent right now. I had a chance to work a camp in the summertime, and it was like a top 100 Adidas camp, and I was amazed at the level of skill from player number one, and it was about 200 kids there. Player number one, or about 200. And I said, wow, this women's game is really going to explode here as it's continued to grow. It's going to really explode here over the next 10 years because of some of the work with the WNBA and all the work that everyone's putting into basketball and training. Would you say you're seeing the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, women's basketball has always been a good product. It's just getting better, and it's getting more attention as it gets more attention. And people now understand, kids understand, hey, I can actually make a living at this. So let me go ahead and get myself in the gym and, get up some shots. And you have, excellent coaches who care about their athletes and developing their athletes holistically. So I'm not surprised. This is something that's been coming and is going to get even better.
Yeah. How does it, one of the things I've always struggled with, like with the WNBA, for example, it just feels like there's not as many places for rookies. Right? Because like the best stars sort of stay for a long period of time, and they play well. I mean, they're the best players in the league. And I'm always curious, how are we going to open up places for young stars to come in and have opportunity?
Yeah, it's economics. There's only X amount spots on the team. But as the league grows, they'll get more opportunity. It's always about the almighty dollar.
Yeah.
You got to have more teams to have more spots, and obviously, kids can go overseas, but a lot of young ladies want to stay home now. So I know a lot of people are working really hard to make that happen, to open up those opportunities for the young players.
Yeah, and kind of sticking along this, I mean, we're diving into NCAA tournament time. Are there a few teams, a few players that you've really enjoyed studying through the year that you think will have a great March?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Caitlin Clark at Iowa is incredible. South Carolina, Leah Boston is incredible. I have a player that I'm going to be doing on Friday. Kitley, who's an unbelievable, has some elite footwork as a post player. So she's going to be great. But I think there's so many that I can't even name right now. It's going to be a tremendous tournament, and it's going to be some great competition.
Yeah, when I watch Caitlin Clark, I'm like, how does she do this? like some of the things she does on the floor are just amazing.
Yeah, and it's same thing for Leah Boston. Like, just people think because she's surrounded by these great players that she doesn't have to do a whole lot, but she has 3, 4, 5 people around her sometimes, and so she has to really play an intellectual game to make sure that she does the right thing when she gets the basketball. She's essentially playing point guard from the post area because she's got all these people around her. She's got to navigate that correctly for them to win. So, those are the top 2, obviously, that people are going to see. But I think there's a lot of people that are going to be surprised at some of the players that they'll see this weekend.
Yeah, the skill level, like you said, the footwork. It's every year. I mean, you hit on it. It's just getting better and better every single year. Someone else I enjoy watching is Dawn Staley coach. And some of the things that she's able to do with her entire team, how they operate, how she handles herself. What do you think about South Carolina? What do you think about Dawn?
I love the way she puts herself out there. She puts herself out there for her players. She protects her players. She promotes her players. She develops her players. And she, as she said, she's a dream merchant. She's gotten so much from the game. Her sole goal is to give back to the game, and I really appreciate that about her. I don't think people appreciate enough her basketball acumen and her high basketball IQ. They just think she has these players and she rolls them out there and they just play. But I think she's a tremendous coach, tactician, and I just enjoy, watching her do her thing on and off the court. I was watching the other day, and she's got an Aflac commercial now, and I was like, good for you. You didn't used to see that, but she's delving more into that stuff. And I was like, good for you, coach. She's on there with Mike Krzyzewski, and I was like, go ahead and make that money. She has I think the proper perspective in terms of coaching. It's not just about the X's and O's, and because of that, she makes her players better people, but that makes them a better team, I think, overall, because they do understand the bigger picture on a daily basis. And, her players are going to go on to do great things outside of basketball, but certainly going to be great basketball players.
Yeah, I'm just a huge fan. I'm watching, anytime you watch her play, I mean, every game someone's doing something different to try and stop them.
Yeah.
Whether it's a diamond in one or packing everything in, or everyone's doing something different, and she always does an amazing job. I mean, I think her basketball acumen is one of the best in the game, period. Because the ability to be able to adjust that way on the fly and have enough stuff ready for your team is really difficult to do, and she does it. It looks flawless how she attacks it.
It does, but no one sees what goes on, in practice every day. How many hours of film she and her staff watch. That's you're a coach, you understand just how much work we put in to get to that point, but your kids still have to execute. So you have to give their, coaching staff credit, because they're literally everybody's biggest game every game. And so to have that mentality to still produce and execute under those circumstances is not easy.
Yeah. And they always have such a sense of calm. That's the one thing is the adjustments, absolutely, but the sense of calmness that you have the answers. You can tell everyone on the floor, everyone knows we have the answers here. We'll figure it out. We'll find a way. And like you said, that really speaks to the level of coaching that's happening in practice every day.
Yeah, and that's a direct reflection of Dawn. She's not going nuts on the sideline most times. And then there are times where she lets them figure it out. Sometimes there are people going, hey, she needs to call timeout, but she knows her team. And sometimes you just have to let your team figure it out. You hope that it doesn't result in a loss, but you want them to learn that lesson that they need to. And you can't, it's not like football where you can stop the game and send in a play. It's constant back and forth. And so the players, as a staff, you have to grow your players' basketball IQ so they can figure things out. You want it to get to the point where your players are coming to you and go, hey, coach, I see such and such, what do you think about, or should we, you want to have that kind of back and forth.
Yeah, that's when your team has a chance to be great.
Yeah.
When they're full participants in what you're doing on a day-to-day basis and not just being compliant and listening.
Yeah, they have ownership of the program.
Yeah.
I'd
love to talk a little bit about, I love talking women's basketball. We'll dive into that a little bit more later, I'm sure. But I want to talk about your consulting business and some of the things you're seeing with coaches as you're working with them and young coaches in particular. This is a topic we've talked a lot about on our show because we really try to use this platform to drive elite performance from coaches and having other opportunities to learn from others. Let's talk a little bit about your consulting business, why you started it, and some of the things and some of the reasons why you enjoy doing it.
Yeah, well, full disclosure, I got fired as a head coach. I sat down, I thought about what could I have done different. And as I went through, my career, I thought about all these things that I should have been doing, approaches that I should have been taking. And I realized that although I worked at some of the most elite institutions in the world, literally, I wasn't as prepared as I should have been in a lot of different areas. And I think most coaches are apt to go to clinics and get better at X's and O's and things like that. That's the first thing that we think about. And then the second thing we think about is I got to get the players. And not that those two things aren't important, but I really felt like there were three areas that I should have been more proficient in: leadership, management, and communication. And I don't think that people think about those things because they have they have a direct impact on whether or not you succeed. I think as a coach, you need to be ever curious and ever evolving in all three of those areas. And so you're constantly needing to learn and get better. And if you don't take that approach, it's going to be difficult for you. And so that was one thing. The other piece was, did I take jobs that were the right jobs? And what I mean by that is, we get into coaching and, we want to hurry up and be a head coach, right? That's the ultimate goal for a lot of people. But did I take the right jobs? Was I mindful, planful, but more important, was I strategic about the opportunities that I took? Were they a good fit? And then could I have done a better job in terms of strategy of engineering opportunities for myself that would have been the best fit? I think there is some merit to putting your head down and grinding, doing your job. But I think as coaches, we subscribe to, okay, somebody's going to come find me. And I want to change the paradigm to us thinking about, well, this is where I want to be. So how do I get myself there? How do I engineer that? Who do I need to develop relationships with? What skills do I need to enhance or acquire so that if I want to work at Harvard University and I want to be the head coach there, how do I engineer that? What path do I take? There's a lot of different paths. So do I become a D3 head coach? Do I go to be an assistant at a Power 5 where academics is big? Do I work in the Ivy League? So having a plan and a strategy to get to the point where you want to be, because then I think you're happier. And if you're happy, everybody else is happy. Mama, the phrase, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. I think today, you need, I don't even want to say balance. I want to say work-life integration. So you need to make sure that you're happy in all areas of your life if you're going to be successful. And so, those are just some of the things that I thought about. And the young coaches, there needs to be a certain amount of patience, yeah. but I also appreciate, how they want to go and get, their drive and how they want to go and get to the point where they want to be. There needs to be meet in the middle somewhere there with the patience and the drive. But understanding that you're not just a coach now. I was having a conversation with a coach, and she had a great outlook on it. She goes, I approach this now in this new environment as a general manager. I get up every morning and I think, what areas do I need to pay attention to, and I hired the right people to take care of certain things so that I don't have to take care of everything. And I think that it's really important with NIL, with transfer portal. There's so many, fundraising interviews. There's so many things that have a direct impact on your success, but have nothing to do with the X's and O's, of your sport, whether it's basketball, football, tennis, volleyball, or anything like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Being out this year as well, I've had a chance to sort of talk to a lot of coaches, and I kind of share the same passion as you. I think we kind of see it the same way. It's like people aren't breaking it down like that. They're just sort of traveling along the river and at different stops that are allowed to them, instead of saying, what do I really want in this?
Right.
Which I think is a pretty common thing. You sort of just jump in the game because you have passion for the game, and you don't recognize that it's not a game after you get to a certain stop. It's a profession, it's a job. And so try to make those kind of decisions. And what kind of things, you have a young coach, what kind of things are you doing to help them establish their leadership and understanding what they need to do better in that area?
Well, I think the first thing is to give them context. Like this is a thing. Like whenever coaches, we still as a profession, they just give you a whistle and they say, welcome to the profession. It's not like any other profession, whether it's, if you're in pharmaceutical sales, you've got to you've got to have a certification every once in a while. If you're insurance, if you're, a medical doctor, like that, at certain points, you have to renew your certification, right? Yeah. You don't have to really do that in coaching per se. And so I try to help them understand that most people, when they get into coaching, when they start, they coach the way that they were coached. Mm-hmm. That could be good. That could be bad. But I think being self-aware and self-reflective, which a lot of us don't do at any age, but certainly at a young age, so that you can understand what works for me, or, and what leadership style am I comfortable with? But also understanding that I'm going to have to get out of that comfort zone in terms of leadership if I want to be successful. So how do I do that? Who do I seek out? What books do I read? What people do I talk to? What classes do I take? And in order to, I don't have all the answers, and it's more than fine that you don't have all the answers, but you have to be curious. You have to know that as a coach, you need to evolve every day. Right. That's really key. So I think that's a piece that, in terms of leadership, that I try to help the young people just see, because it's your responsibility, right? Yeah. No one's going to come to you and say, hey, you need to take this class. Hey, you need to, because now it's, when you take over a team, every player is different, right? Every player has a different personality. Every player processes information differently. So are you aware that, some players are better visual learners, some players are auditory learners, some players are kinesthetic learners. How do you make sure that you reach all types of learners every day in practice and games? And so just giving them context in terms of what it is they're going to be dealing with, and then trying to give them some areas to, some places to go to work on that, because everybody's different. Your leadership style is different than mine. Yeah. But the underlying foundation should be that you're trying to develop this young person. So you got to be better yourself so that you can help develop them.
Yeah, I think the awareness in those three areas is sometimes lacking. Just a true awareness of where someone stands. I always feel like the management, when I connect with coaches, the management style of that is often antiquated, based mostly off of how I was coached or how, who I worked under. And so I always feel like that's an area that can have the biggest growth, is the management of how you run the entire operation.
Yeah. And let's be honest, at the higher levels, it's a business now. And so you have to, not only do you have to lead, but you have to hire the right people. So a lot of coaches, they don't know how to hire. How do you hire? Right? What do you look for in the person that that's going to be on your staff? You certainly don't want somebody who's exactly like you. You do want someone who shares your values, your core values, but you don't want someone that's going to tell you yes all the time, and you don't want someone that you have to micromanage. I used to tell my staff, listen, this is what I want. This is why I want it. This is when I want it by. All I need for you to do is make sure that how you handle it is moral, legal, and ethical. If you take those three things into account, then come back to me with some solutions, because I don't have all the answers and you have a different perspective. So you might have something way better than me. Why am I wasting my energy when I can have you, come to me with something that might be way better? So the only thing I require is that it's moral, legal, and ethical. So go forth and bring back some wonderful solutions, and then we'll see which one works. But a lot of people don't know how to hire. That you certainly don't want to hire your best friend.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know how to do the research to find out if that person is who their resume says they are. How deep can you dig into their background and find out what kind of person they are, what kind of work ethic? Are you checking? Because the coaching world is very small. Obviously, people aren't going to put references that are going to say bad things about them, right? So yeah, you check their references, but you go beyond that. You use your network and your relationships to go, hey, Jamion applied for my job. What do you know about him? Because often that's how people get opportunities. So learning how to hire is a big piece of management, because that can make the rest of everything that you do a lot easier or a lot harder. And that's something I had to learn the hard way.
Yeah, I made a hiring mistake when I got to GW. And looking back, the kind of mistakes that you make, right? Like, I think one thing about being reflective is that, and it's not a mistake because the person's bad or anything. It doesn't have anything to do with that. It's just like certain things fit in certain places and certain things don't. And, as I moved up, at Mount St. Mary's, at Siena, every level, you have more people that want your job. Like at the Mountain, I was almost like begging people to take the job, right? So you're like looking for different things. And I feel like I hired better at the Mount than I really did anywhere else. And then the more I moved up, the more people wanted that opportunity. The worse job I did of doing some of those background checks and asking some of those questions. When at the Mountain, I did a lot of that, so I always, when I look at my reflection like you did, I said, man, I could have done a lot better with that area. Just asking more questions and making sure the core values matched.
Yeah, and you're going to need different things at different points in your career at different jobs, right? So if you're someplace, that where you don't have a lot of staff, then you need to hire someone who's experienced and mature, right? There were a couple times where I realized that the gap between myself and my players, the age gap, kept getting larger and larger and larger.
Yeah.
And so I need to hire somebody that was younger who could communicate with the kids in a different way, but who also understood that there were boundaries there and that they were a coach, right? So you're going to need different types of things at different points in your career and at different jobs.
Yeah, it's such an the hiring, the consistency. I always struggle with how long should someone be with you? Like, is there a timetable?
Yeah, I've often said to coaches, to me, 4 years is time for you to start thinking. If you've been with someone for 4 years, there needs to be a change. Either you need a new opportunity or you need new duties, because I think you've learned everything you can, in 3 to 4 years. And so in order for that program to grow, in order for you to grow, then there needs to be some sort of change. So you want different duties, or are you looking for another opportunity so that you can grow? I think, it's very rare now for people to stay places a very long time. But I think just looking at where you are in 3 to 4 years, have I learned everything that I can from Coach Christian? If I have, then it might be time to move on. Or maybe I need to ask Coach Christian for some different duties. Yes, I was a recruiting coordinator here for 3 years. Now let me take over this budget. Let me take over, fundraising. What areas do I need to do? What areas do I need to engage in if I want to grow as a coach? So that's not set in stone, but to me, that's a good time frame, 3 to 4 years, if you're soaking in everything you should be soaking in during that time.
Yeah, it's just, those are things that you kind of just try to figure out.
Yeah.
And I think on the outside, people think that, all these guys have the answers every step of the way. And it's just a learning process as you grow, like you said, you need different things at different times. You have different players on the roster each year. And maybe that person, or maybe you are struggling to communicate with them. So now I need something else to kind of figure that out. And I think the awareness of that, it's funny. I think in the postseason, I'm actually going to hit a couple of coaches about this today. The postseason assessment is super important. And I think a lot of coaches don't do a postseason assessment. They sort of just move on to the next phase. And I think if you're not taking the proper time, you can really make those mistakes again.
Yeah, and I think that's where the onus is on you to be accountable for your growth. I always, at the end of the season, in two areas, would just assess myself. One, I would take some film and go watch it with a buddy and go, what do you see? Where can I get better? What mistakes did I make? What would you have done? And then the other piece is just working on myself with a coach. And that's why my show is called A Coach for the Coach, and my handle for Twitter is A Coach for the Coach. We forget that we need to be coached too. We forget what that's like. And I often tell coaches, go do something where you're coached. Like go, I learned how to swim late in life. And that whole experience for me was an epiphany, because I was my players, and I realized what that's like to want to please your coach and to have to fight through something that you're afraid of, that you're not sure of, that you don't know how to do. And I actually had 2 different swim coaches. The first one was sort of okay, but I moved on to the second coach, and she was phenomenal because she understood my fear of the water, and she understood how to get me to do things that I didn't want to do. But that whole experience of being coached is something that we forget about because we're so far removed from it. We're not athletes anymore. I mean, we think we are, but we're not at practice every day as an athlete. And so we forget that dynamic. And I really feel like it's important for coaches to have a coach. You have an executive coach that's been there, done that can sort of help give you, again, everything's about context, can help you understand what's coming, not necessarily give you all the answers, because executive coaches are not there to give you the answers. They're there to give you some context and give you tools. So I really think it's important to be coached. And a lot of coaches, they don't want to invest the money, but the ROI on you getting better in terms of strategy for your career and planning for your career is so huge. But again, we just forget. So go get coached in something, or go and coach an itty bitty team, because then you really have to get to the basic fundamentals of communication, trying to keep their attention, trying to make sure that they have fun, also trying to help them learn the game, because it just brings you back, especially when you get to the higher levels. You forget that even at the highest levels, they're still working on the basic fundamentals. But, you're dealing with a high level athlete, and you think they don't need to work on their footwork. Yes, they do every day in some form or fashion. And so I think that that's really, really important in terms of getting a coach and remembering what that experience is like.
I took this I'm taking this public speaking class. So I have the ability to give keynotes and understand how to understand the speaking business. And what I realized is I love being coached.
Yeah.
Did you feel the same way when you're like learning, relearning how to swim or any of that?
Yeah. I thought it was fun. And it was something that I did right after I got fired. I was like, I got to be in control of something. So I've been saying that I was going to learn how to swim forever. I said, this time I'm going to do it. I had 3 or 4 attempts when I was at Navy, when I was at Princeton, and I was just going to do it by myself. And I just gave up. I said, but no, I have nothing but time now. I'm going to learn how to swim. And so it was difficult because, you get in the pool. I'm in the kiddie pool, right? I'm an adult in the kiddie pool. And these little kids and these cute little cats with the fins on just flying by me, making me so mad. And I got my coach there going, well, you need to do this, and this. And you see a kid jump into the deep water. And the goal was to jump into the deep water, swim to the middle, and be able to tread water for 15 minutes. Then I felt like I was a real swimmer. And so they're like, a good coach is like, well, is this what you said you want to do? So you need to jump into the water off the side. That's what we're going to do today. I'm like, no, we're not. I'm not doing that today. And she's like, yes, you are. I'm like, no, I'm not. Yes, you are. And so, just pushing me that way, but then also going, hey, listen, you can really do this. Like, I'm right here. You're just going to jump on the side. You can grab on to, just coaching me through the steps. Finally got me to jump in. And then everything was okay, right? And then slowly being able to have the confidence because swimming is something that it takes a minute, but as soon as your body figures it out, you're like, well, how come I didn't know this before? So I did get to the point where I could swim to the middle and tread water, but just the whole process was, it was so important for that coach to give me the confidence to be able to jump off the side into the water and know that, yeah, it's 15 feet down, but Helen, you're not going to drown, right? Like, first of all, I'm right here. Second of all, there's a lifeguard. Third of all, you're right here at the edge. You can grab onto that kind of stuff. But the confidence piece is something that I think I could have done better with as a coach with my players, because I needed to know my players better. What gives my players confidence, right? Every player wants to, I still think, even in today's age where everything's going on, I still think kids want to please their coach. I don't think that's ever changed. But they're different. They're no better and no worse. So if you're an older coach, you can't be like, oh, back in my day, because this is not the same environment. It's really difficult to grow up today, I think. And so you as a coach have to adapt to how do you give your players the confidence to take the steps that they need to get to where they want to be. And I think the best coaches have the ability to do that, but people forget how important that is, to give kids confidence that they can do whatever task it is you're asking them to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I love that process. I love you went through that and said, I want to go be coaching something. I think it's huge. I love that. I want to hit the last part of your trilogy, the communication part that you spend a lot of time on, and what's crazy is communication styles are changing constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, I would say probably the last 10 or 15 years, they've changed more than they maybe had in the last 30 years before that. So, what are some practices you're seeing that you really like how coaches are communicating? What are some things you're seeing that you really don't like?
Well, I think the first thing is, I go back to this every time, you have to know who you are as a person. I think we come to every interaction with people with the filters that we've experienced, how we grew up, where we've worked, who raised us, what our values are. And I think the hardest part for me was understanding that not everybody grew up the way that I did. So they're not going to have the same values. They're not going to have the same processes for dealing with things. And I had a hard time understanding, because I didn't grow up with a lot of money, lost my parents really young. And so I was really independent at a very young age. And so if something needed to be done, I just went and did it because it had to be done. Who else was going to do it? And so I struggled with kids who didn't have that same mentality, who didn't have that same work ethic. But I had to learn that they grew up different. And so I'm going to have to adapt to helping them understand, like the fundamental things don't change. Hard work, respect for authority, doing things the right way the first time. Like those things have never changed, no matter what decade, no matter what century. But how you get those things achieved is, going to be different. Like you said, the communication piece changes. So, bunch of books, talking to people all the time, talking to people who knew more than I know. And I still do that. Even today with the broadcasting piece, like you do a game and of course your family's going to go, great job, but I'm like, no, I mean, I appreciate that because you guys love me, but where do I need to improve? At what point should I have done this or should I have said that? how should my process have been different? And so I've always been one to seek out coaching from people that are better than me, that are more experienced than me. And then oftentimes they'll give me a book or a webinar or something. They'll give me other ways that I can get better with the communication piece. But I think it's just constant being curious and trying to find whatever you can find. Like you're on your show, you learn something from everybody, every guest that you have. When I do a broadcast, I learn something from every coach. I'm like, dang it, if I'd known that, maybe I'd still be coaching. But it's just having that mentality that you're always going to get better every day, every game, every season. And that's going to make your players better. But it's uncomfortable, Jamie. And it's not, something where, sometimes people tell you things you don't want to hear. Yeah. And that's not very comfortable. And so people shy away from trying to get better because they don't want to be uncomfortable. But that's part of the process. And you have to love that process going through that so that you can, when you come out on the other side, you're like, okay, I got through that. So now I can share that experience with my players. Now I can be a better leader, with my players and with my staff.
Yeah, it's the ability to know. I'm sitting here thinking, like, you don't know what you don't know, but you also have the ability to go and learn it.
Yeah,
if you and figure out what that is.
Yeah, and that's a piece. Like, you should never stop growing as a person in general, but certainly as a leader, there's always something you can do better, learn better. Whether it's, I don't know, whether it's getting better with technology, whether it's better with your one-on-one meetings with your players, whether it's developing your staff, if it's, managing up. That's a process I never even thought about. Like, you have to manage your boss.
Yeah.
Never even thought about that when I was coaching. But that's part of being a successful coach, managing the people around you, managing up, down, and, laterally with your colleagues. I mean, it's just not something that I thought about when I was a head coach. And I think I would have been a better one had I thought about those things and gotten better at them.
Yeah. Where can our guests find more about you?
They can, my Twitter handle is a coach for the coach. They can DM me there. I have HMW Sports Consulting website, and I have Instagram and Facebook too. They're all a coach for the coach. So I'm growing in those social media areas, but certainly they can get to me anywhere, and I'll be, again, just, doing television this weekend. So I'm pretty excited about that.
I love it. We've got one last question that we do with all our guests. The title of the show is Last Call. And so it's the end of the night. Maybe you've had a glass of wine. Maybe you've had a late dinner. You've got two people beside you. On the left side of you, you've got someone who's retired. On the right side of you, you've got someone who's still active and working, no family. What two people do you have beside you at the end of the night?
Wow. So active, definitely Dawn Staley. Like, I would love to, man, just pick her brain. I'm not planning on getting into coaching anymore, but she's a great leader for any entity.
Yeah, great.
I think that would be great. And then retired. Wow, that's a great question. I would love to pick the brain of Mike Krzyzewski.
Ooh. Yeah. You, Coach K, and Dawn at the end of the night?
I would love to pick his brain.
That's going to be good.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. Helen, you've been a great guest. I look forward to work with you down the road.
Well, I appreciate it. And your listeners are getting a lot of good stuff from you, so they should continue to tune in.
And they got to sign over to your show as well. So we'll make sure we put that in the show notes.
That sounds good.
Thank you for joining us on The Last Call, powered by Speakeasy, where careers grow through relationships and relationships grow through Speakeasy. We hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to connecting with you soon.